I knew something was wrong when her side of the closet was empty. At first, my brain refused to process it. I just stood there staring at the wooden hangers. They were still swinging slightly, like they had been disturbed not long ago. The faint scent of her perfume still lingered in the air. Vanilla and something floral. It felt cruel that even the smell hadn't left yet. But she had. Her dresses were gone. Her heels were gone. The red suitcase she always complained about was gone. The silence inside the bedroom felt louder than any argument we ever had. I walked slowly to the dresser. Her jewelry box wasn't there. The drawer where she kept her important papers was empty. No broken glass. No screaming. No warning. Just gone. That's when I saw it. A single envelope on the bed. My name written in her neat, careful handwriting. I didn't rush to open it. I already knew it wouldn't contain an explanation that made sense. Still, I tore it open. 2 lines. That was all she gave me. I need more than what you can give. Please don't try to find me. I read it 3 times. I need more. More what? More money? More status? More excitement? I closed my eyes for a second and let the words sink in. They didn't hurt the way I expected. Not sharp. Not explosive. It felt slower than that. Like something heavy settling in my chest. I sat down on the edge of the bed. The mattress still dipped on her side from where she used to sleep. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. Finally, I picked it up. Marcus. I answered. Yeah. There was a pause on the other side. He didn't greet me. That's how I knew he already knew. You've seen it? He asked. Seen what? He sighed. Open Instagram. I didn't want to, but I did. And there it was. Vanessa. On a beach. Wearing white. Standing beside Ryan Cole. Caption. Forever starts today. The comments were exploding. Congratulations. Power couple. Great. Great. I stared at the screen. The sunlight in the picture was bright. The ocean behind them looked peaceful. She was smiling wide. Ryan's hand rested on her waist like he had always owned her. My thumb hovered over the screen. 3 days. 3 days ago she was in this apartment. Drinking coffee from my mug. Asking me what we should cook for dinner. 3 days later she was married. She didn't even call, Marcus said quietly. No, I replied. She didn't. Are you okay? That question annoyed me. I'm fine. Daniel? I said I'm fine. There was silence. Marcus knew me well enough not to push too hard. So, he asked carefully, what are you going to do? I looked around the bedroom one more time. The empty closet. The quiet walls. The folded letter in my hand. For a brief second I imagined driving to the beach. Confronting them. Making a scene. But that wasn't me. I had never been the emotional one. That was Vanessa. I stood up and walked back to the closet. I touched the empty wooden rod where her dresses used to hang. It didn't feel like loss. It felt like revelation. Nothing, I finally said. What? I'm going to do nothing. Marcus let out a breath. That doesn't sound like you. I smirked slightly. Not yet. There was something calm spreading through me now. Not forgiveness. Not anger either. Clarity. Ryan Cole. Flashy. Loud. Big promises. Bigger loans. I had met him twice at networking events. He talked too much about leverage and fast growth. About doubling returns in months. I remembered the numbers he mentioned. They didn't add up. Vanessa always said I was too cautious. Too stable. Too boring. Ryan wasn't stable. He was risky. And risky things collapse. Daniel, Marcus said carefully, don't do something stupid. I won't. And I meant it. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to expose her. Because revenge built on emotion is messy. Revenge built on patience is permanent. I folded the letter neatly and placed it back inside the envelope. Then I walked to the living room. Her favorite blanket was still on the couch. I picked it up and folded it slowly. Not angrily. Methodically. She said she needed more than what I could give. That line burned again in my mind. More. I walked to my home office and turned on the lights. The city skyline outside the window shimmered under the evening sun. I opened my laptop. Not to stalk her. Not to scroll. But to look at numbers. Ryan Cole's company. Public filings. Debt structures. Investment timelines. She wanted more. I would show her what more really looked like. Marcus was still on the line. You're quiet, he said. I'm thinking. That's what scares me. I allowed myself a small smile. Inside something had changed. Not broken. Sharpened. She thinks she left me behind, I said calmly. And? I leaned back in my chair and stared at the city below. She just gave me a reason to move faster. The closet was empty. But I wasn't. And for the first time since reading that letter, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt focused. Ryan is flashy. That's the first word that comes to mind every time I see him. Flashy cars. Flashy suits. Flashy promises. The kind of man who speaks loudly in restaurants and makes sure everyone hears his net worth before dessert arrives. 3 days after Vanessa disappeared from my closet, I started studying him the way I study markets. Calmly. Without emotion. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I wanted clarity. His social media was easy to find. He loved attention too much to hide. Private jets. Champagne. Ocean view villas. Long captions about building empires. Empires. I opened my laptop and pulled up public filings. Ryan Cole Holdings. 16 properties in 2 years. Aggressive expansion. Heavy leverage. Very heavy leverage. I leaned back in my chair and let the numbers settle in my mind. 40% financed through short-term bridge loans. Adjustable interest rates. High exposure to investor pullout risk. On the surface it looked bold. Underneath it looked fragile. Like a skyscraper built on sand. My phone buzzed again. Marcus. You stalking them? He asked. I don't stalk, I replied. I research. He laughed softly. That's worse. I ignored that. Instead, I pulled up one of Ryan's latest interviews. He was standing in front of a half-finished development project, sunglasses on, smiling like he owned the skyline. We move fast, he said confidently. Fortune favors the bold. Fortune also favors liquidity. He didn't mention that part. Meanwhile, Vanessa's Instagram was glowing with honeymoon pictures. Beach resorts. Sunset dinners. Designer dresses I'd never seen before. The comments were predictable. Couple goals. Power duo. She leveled up. Leveled up. I zoomed in on one photo. Her smile was wide. Too wide. I had lived with her long enough to read micro-expressions. When she was genuinely happy, her eyes softened. When she was performing, her lips did most of the work. In the third photo, Ryan's hand was gripping her waist tightly. Possessive. Not affectionate. In another clip, he interrupted her mid-sentence and laughed over her words. Small things. Almost invisible. But I noticed. Marcus showed up at my office that evening without warning. He dropped into the chair across from my desk and kicked his feet up. So, he said, she upgraded? I smirked slightly. No. She gambled. He raised an eyebrow. That confident? I don't deal in confidence. I deal in data. I turned my laptop toward him and showed him the loan structure. He whistled. That's a lot of debt. That's a house of cards. Marcus leaned back. You planning to knock it down? I shook my head. Not planning anything. That was the truth. I wasn't going to interfere. I wasn't going to sabotage. I was simply watching. Observation is power. If you understand the structure, you don't need to push. You just wait. Vanessa posted another story that night. A candlelit dinner in a rooftop restaurant. Ryan raised a glass toward the camera. She leaned into him. But her shoulders were stiff. I paused the video. See that? I asked Marcus. What? She's not relaxed. You're analyzing body language now? I always have. Marcus studied the paused image. Maybe she's just nervous. Maybe. But my instincts told me something else. Vanessa loved security. She loved feeling stable. Ryan didn't feel stable. He felt exciting. Excitement fades. Debt doesn't. Over the next 2 weeks I kept watching quietly. No messages. No calls. No reaction. Ryan's company announced another property acquisition. Big numbers. Bigger promises. But buried in the article was a small detail. Refinancing pending. Pending means pressure. Marcus glanced at me one afternoon while I was scrolling through financial reports. You're too calm, he said. I closed the laptop slowly. Anger makes people stupid. And you're not angry? I thought about that for a second. I remembered the empty closet. The letter. The beach photo. I admitted, for about an hour. And now I'm curious. Curious about what? How long before reality catches up? Marcus studied me carefully. You still love her? That question hung in the air longer than I liked. I loved who she was, I said finally. Not who she chose to be. That was the difference. The woman I loved valued stability, partnership, long-term growth. The woman who eloped valued speed, applause, appearances. People don't change overnight. but desperation can reveal who they really are. A week later, Ryan posted a photo of a new Lamborghini. Caption, "Hard work pays off." I smiled faintly. No. Short-term leverage pays off. For a while. That night, I stood in front of my office window watching the city lights flicker. Marcus joined me. "She looks happy," he said quietly. I didn't answer right away. Because happiness online is cheap. Balance sheets aren't. "She chose volatility," I said at last. "Let's see how much she can handle." Marcus shook his head slowly. "You're scary when you're calm." I glanced at him. "I'm not planning revenge." "Then what are you planning?" I looked back at the skyline. "Nothing." And I meant it. I wasn't moving against Ryan. I wasn't interfering in their marriage. I was just studying the terrain. Because when someone builds their future on unstable foundations, you don't need to push them. You just need to step aside. And wait. Vanessa thought she upgraded. But she didn't understand something simple. Upgrade implies stability. What she chose was acceleration. And acceleration without control? That's just a faster way to crash. 3 months later, she walked back into my life. Not with confidence. Not with pride. Crying. My assistant's voice came through the intercom while I was reviewing a property acquisition draft. "Daniel, there's someone here asking to see you. She says it's urgent." I already knew. "Send her in." The door opened slowly. Vanessa stood there. No designer sunglasses. No bright smile. No beach glow. She looked thinner. Pale. Tired. For a second I remembered the night she left. The empty closet. The letter. Now she was standing in front of me like the world had just taught her a lesson. "Hi," she whispered. I didn't stand up immediately. "Vanessa." She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Her hands were shaking slightly. That detail surprised me. Vanessa never shook. She thrived in social chaos. She was always composed in public. "What happened?" I asked calmly. That's when she broke. Tears spilled down her cheeks, fast and uncontrolled. "I made a mistake." There it was. The sentence I knew would come. Not if. When. I leaned back in my chair and folded my hands together. "What kind of mistake?" She let out a breath that sounded almost painful. "Ryan isn't who I thought he was." I didn't interrupt. "His money, it's not stable. He's drowning in loans. Investors are pressuring him. He's always angry now." She wiped her face quickly. "He checks my phone. He doesn't like when I talk to anyone from before." "Before?" I repeated. "You." Silence settled between us. She walked closer to my desk. "He says you're trying to sabotage him." That made me almost smile. "I haven't done anything." "I know," she whispered quickly. "I know you haven't." Her voice cracked again. "He yells, Daniel. He's different at home. He's controlling. He doesn't like when I question his decisions." "And the money?" She hesitated. "It's not as real as it looked." Of course it wasn't. I watched her carefully. 3 months ago she said she needed more than what I could give. Now she was standing in my office asking for stability. "I was wrong," she said again, quieter this time. "I thought you were too careful. Too slow. I thought I was missing out." I finally stood up. Not to comfort her. Just to level the space between us. "You didn't think you were missing out," I corrected softly. "You thought you deserved better." She flinched slightly. "I thought you didn't fight for me." I held her gaze. "You left before there was anything to fight." Her shoulders dropped. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said it. "I need help." There it was. Not, "I miss you." Not, "I love you." Help. What kind of help? I asked evenly. "Ryan's under pressure. He's refinancing everything. He's scared." "I'm scared." Her voice lowered. "You understand finance better than anyone I know." I walked around my desk slowly. "You want me to advise your husband?" She winced at the word. "Daniel, please." I studied her face. This wasn't about love. This was about fear. And fear makes people return to what feels safe. "You made a mistake," I said calmly. She nodded quickly. "Yes." "No," I corrected. "You made a choice." That landed harder than I expected. I saw it in her eyes. "I thought you were holding me back," she whispered. "And now," she swallowed. "Now I realize you were building something real." That wasn't pride talking. That was regret. She stepped closer. "I don't know what to do." I didn't answer. Because by now, I was already doing something. 2 weeks earlier, I had met with Evelyn Shaw. Sure. Strategic. Ruthless in business but precise. Ryan had approached her firm months ago for short-term bridge capital. She declined. I didn't. Instead, I asked questions. Loan structures. Refinancing timelines. Investor exposure. Ryan had stretched himself thin. Evelyn and I saw opportunity. Legally clean. Completely professional. We weren't attacking him. We were acquiring distressed positions. Buying debt quietly through secondary channels. Restructuring portfolios. Moving pieces into place. Vanessa didn't know that. And I wasn't going to tell her. Daniel, she whispered again. Please. I'm asking you. I looked at her carefully. The woman who left without a goodbye. The woman who said I wasn't enough. Now she was standing in my office asking for protection. You want me to fix what you chose, I said. Tears slid down her face again. I don't know what else to do. I walked back behind my desk. I'm not your safety net anymore. She stared at me like I had just taken something away. You don't care? I care about outcomes, I replied calmly. And you're experiencing one. Her lips trembled. Are you going to hurt him? I almost laughed. I don't operate like that. Then what are you doing? I met her eyes steadily. Business. She searched my face for emotion. For anger. For jealousy. She found none. That scared her more than anything. I thought you would fight for me, she said one last time. I fight for what's mine, I answered quietly. You chose not to be. That ended it. She stood there for a few seconds as if waiting for me to soften. I didn't. Finally, she turned and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she paused. I never meant to hurt you. I didn't respond. The door closed softly behind her. I walked to the window and looked out at the city below. 3 months. That's all it took for the first crack to appear. My phone buzzed. Evelyn. Transfer completed, she said smoothly. We now control 30% of his bridge exposure. I allowed myself a small nod. Good. You sure this isn't personal? She asked lightly. It's structural, I replied. I ended the call and stared at the skyline again. Vanessa thought she came back before the damage began. She didn't realize. The damage wasn't emotional. It was financial. And it was already in motion. I don't believe in chaos. I believe in structure. And when I finally mapped Ryan Cole's structure out completely, one thing became clear. He wasn't rich. He was inflated. There's a difference. 3 nights after Vanessa showed up crying in my office, I sat across from Evelyn in a quiet private conference room. No assistants. No paper trails beyond what was necessary. Just numbers. Ryan's portfolio looked impressive on the surface. Luxury condos, waterfront developments, mixed-use towers with flashy branding. But underneath? Bridge loans. Short-term debt. High-interest exposure. Investors who wanted fast returns. And investors who panic when timelines slip. He moved too fast, Evelyn said calmly, flipping through the projections. Acquired at peak pricing. Refinance windows closing. If even 2 major backers pull out, he's underwater. He's already underwater, I replied. Evelyn studied me carefully. You knew this before I did. I suspected. She leaned back in her chair. So what's the move? I didn't hesitate. We buy his debt. Not the properties. Not the headlines. The debt. Because whoever owns the debt owns the leverage. Evelyn smiled faintly. Through secondary channels? Quietly. No hostility? None. She nodded once. Clean acquisition. That's the key. No threats. No personal attacks. No sabotage. Just opportunity. And opportunity doesn't ask permission. Over the next 2 weeks we moved precisely. One investor wanted liquidity? We provided it. Another nervous about exposure? We bought their position at a discount. All legal. All documented. All professional. Ryan never even saw us coming. Meanwhile, Vanessa kept calling. The first call I didn't answer. The second I declined. The third I picked up. Daniel, she said immediately, her voice tight with stress. He's under so much pressure. I'm aware, I replied calmly. You're aware? She repeated. His refinancing window is closing. Silence. How do you know that? I read. She hesitated. He's blaming you. For what? He says investors are pulling out because of rumors. I almost smiled. Investors were pulling out because they wanted stability. Ryan offered speed. Speed collapses when the road bends. I'm not spreading rumors, I said evenly. I know, she whispered. That part almost sounded sincere. You think I can help him? I asked. She paused. I think, You understand how to fix things. That sentence carried more weight than she realized. She didn't just mean finance. She meant her life. You're asking the wrong person, I replied. Daniel, please. There was again. Please. 3 months ago she said I wasn't enough. Now I was the only person she trusted to stabilize the chaos she chose. I won't interfere in his business, I said calmly. You won't help? I won't interfere. That wasn't a lie. I wasn't interfering. I was acquiring. After I ended the call, Marcus walked into my office without knocking. He had that look on his face. The one that says he knows I'm 10 steps ahead. So, he said, dropping into the chair opposite my desk, how deep are you in this? Deep enough. Define deep. We control nearly half of his short-term exposure. Marcus blinked. You're serious. Always. He leaned forward. Is this revenge? I met his eyes calmly. No. This is business. He didn't look convinced. Daniel, he said carefully, you could have walked away. I did walk away. Then why this? I stood up and walked toward the window. Because I needed him to understand something. Ryan built his company on unstable capital, I said. He over-leveraged. He ignored risk. I didn't create that weakness. But you're exploiting it. I'm investing in it. There's a difference. Revenge is emotional. This is structural. Marcus stood and walked beside me. She came back crying, he said quietly. You could have taken her back. I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was simple. If I had reacted emotionally the night she left, I would have chased her. But once I saw Ryan's foundation, I didn't need to chase anything. It was already collapsing. She chose volatility, I said. I choose control. Marcus shook his head slowly. You're cold? No, I corrected. I'm disciplined. There's nothing illegal about buying distressed debt. Nothing immoral about stepping into a weak position. If I didn't do it, someone else would. The only difference? I understood the entire picture. 2 days later, Ryan publicly announced a strategic restructuring. That's corporate language for trouble. Vanessa called again that night. He's furious, she said. Banks are asking questions. Investors are demanding updates. That's normal, I replied. He says someone's buying his positions. I didn't speak. Is it you? She asked softly. I paused deliberately. Would it matter? She inhaled sharply. So it is. I invest where there's value. Daniel, this is my life. No, I said calmly. This is his business. You're destroying him. I'm purchasing exposure. She fell silent. I could almost hear the realization settling in. You said you weren't going to hurt him, she whispered. I'm not. And if he loses everything? That depends on how well he built it. There was a long pause. Why are you doing this? She asked finally. Because he was reckless. Because you thought recklessness was attractive. Because I don't compete emotionally. I compete strategically. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I answered truthfully. Because opportunity doesn't wait. She hung up without another word. I stood there in the quiet office for a long time after. The city lights reflected against the glass. Ryan believed growth solved everything. I believe structure solves everything. By the end of the week, Evelyn called with the final update. We now hold majority leverage. Meaning? If we tighten the terms, he folds. If we restructure carefully, he survives but diminished. Control. That's what this was about. Not anger. Not jealousy. Control. Marcus stepped back into my office late that evening. So, he asked, it's done. He studied me carefully. You don't look satisfied. I'm not celebrating. Why not? Because this isn't a victory. It's inevitability. She wanted more, Marcus said quietly. I nodded. She just didn't understand the cost. Outside, the city moved like it always does. Indifferent. Ryan still thought he was fighting competitors. He didn't realize the real pressure wasn't external. It was structural. And Vanessa? She still believed I would save her emotionally. She didn't realize I had already repositioned myself financially. Cleanly. Legally. Professionally. No shouting. No confrontation. Just numbers moving quietly beneath the surface. If this was revenge, it would have felt louder. Instead, it felt precise. Collapse never happens loudly at first. It starts with whispers. An article buried in the business section. A delayed payment. An investor restructuring position. Then suddenly, everyone pretends they didn't see it coming. Ryan's company didn't fall in a day. It staggered. The first headline appeared on a Tuesday morning. Cole Developments delays refinancing on flagship tower. I read it over coffee. No emotion. Just confirmation. By Thursday, 2 secondary lenders had exited. By Friday, 3 institutional investors demanded liquidity reviews. I didn't make a single phone call. I didn't issue a statement. I simply watched. My phone buzzed at 11:42 p.m. Vanessa. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I answered. You knew this would happen, she said immediately. Her voice wasn't angry. It was terrified. I knew it was possible, I replied calmly. He's losing everything. He's restructuring. Daniel, stop pretending, she snapped. Investors are pulling out because someone's buying his exposure and tightening conditions. She wasn't wrong. But she still didn't understand the difference. I warned you about shortcuts, I said quietly. There was silence on the line. You never warned me, she whispered. I did. You just didn't want to hear it. Flashy growth. Risk without cushion. Debt without patience. She confused speed with strength. Ryan says you're targeting him. I'm not targeting anyone. You're dismantling him. I'm purchasing leverage. The truth doesn't need volume. It just needs clarity. She let out a shaky breath. He's not sleeping. He's angry all the time. He thinks everyone betrayed him. That part didn't surprise me. Men like Ryan don't believe in risk. They believe in destiny. Until destiny asks for payment. I didn't force him to overborrow, I said. No. I didn't force him to expand at peak valuations. No. I didn't force him to treat investors like guaranteed loyalty. She went quiet. The sound of her breathing softened. He said you always envied him, she murmured. That actually made me laugh. Envied what? His boldness. Boldness without backup is recklessness. There was again. Silence. 3 months ago she would have defended him instantly. Now, she sounded unsure. The next headline dropped 2 days later. Cole Developments faces liquidity pressure amid market volatility. Volatility. That's the word people use when they don't want to say miscalculation. Marcus walked into my office with a tablet in his hand. Well, he said, holding up the screen, this escalated. I scanned the article quickly. Analysts questioning leverage ratio. Rumors of asset liquidation. Board review pending. Feels personal? Marcus asked. No, I replied. Feels predictable. My phone rang again. This time it wasn't Vanessa. It was Ryan. I considered ignoring it. Then I answered. Daniel Hayes. You think you're clever? Ryan's voice was sharp, controlled anger barely masking panic. I prefer disciplined. You've been buying my debt. Yes. You're trying to bankrupt me. I'm restructuring positions. You're suffocating liquidity. You suffocated it when you borrowed irresponsibly. He exhaled loudly. You always played safe, he sneered. That's why she left. I didn't react. She left because she wanted more, he continued. Because you were too slow. And how's fast working out? I asked calmly. Silence. Heavy. You think this makes you superior? He demanded. No, I replied evenly. It makes me prepared. You could have approached me directly. And say what? That I'm acquiring your exposure. You could have offered partnership. I don't partner with instability. He swore under his breath. You're destroying everything I built. No, I corrected. Your structure is collapsing under its own weight. He hung up without another word. I set my phone down slowly. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's satisfying? No, it wasn't. It felt inevitable. By the end of the month, Ryan announced asset sales. Luxury properties listed quietly. Developments paused. Public confidence cracked. Vanessa showed up at my office again. This time she didn't cry immediately. She looked exhausted. Is there any way to stop this? She asked softly. Stop what? Everything. I looked at her carefully. This isn't about me, I said. She shook her head slowly. I thought he was strong. He was loud. I thought you were holding me back. I was stabilizing. Her eyes filled again. I thought I was choosing ambition. You were choosing acceleration. She sat down without asking permission. I left because I thought I deserved excitement, she whispered. I thought love was supposed to feel bigger. And now, she swallowed hard. Now I realize I confused noise with security. That was the first honest thing she had said since walking back into my life. I didn't leave you for love, she continued quietly. I left because I was afraid of being average. That hit deeper than I expected. Not because it hurt. Because it explained everything. Ryan wasn't better. He was louder. I never wanted average, she said. And you didn't have it, I replied. You had stability. She shook her head slowly. I didn't understand the difference. I stood up and walked to the window. The skyline looked the same as it always did. Buildings rise. Buildings fall. But foundations decide everything. You can't fix this? She asked again. I can restructure debt, I said calmly. I can't restructure judgment. She closed her eyes briefly. He said he loved me. Maybe he did. But he loved risk more. Yes. She finally understood. She didn't leave for love. She left for illusion. For image. For speed. For the feeling of rising fast. And now that rise had stalled. Do you hate me? She asked quietly. No. That answer surprised her. I don't hate you. What do you feel? I turned back toward her. Clarity. Tears slipped down her cheeks again. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just realization. I thought you were too careful, she whispered. I was building something that lasts. Outside, the market kept moving. Inside, the illusion finally shattered. Ryan didn't lose because of me. He lost because he built for applause instead of endurance. Vanessa didn't leave because she was in love. She left because she mistook volume for value. And now, the collapse wasn't emotional. It was structural. And she was finally seeing the difference. Vanessa didn't text before coming this time. She just walked into my office again. No assistant announcement. No dramatic entrance. Just quiet footsteps and a knock that sounded smaller than she used to be. When I looked up, I barely recognized her. No makeup. No designer bag. No polished confidence. Just regret. Hi, she said softly. I didn't stand immediately. Vanessa. She closed the door behind her and stayed near it, like she wasn't sure she had the right to walk any further. Ryan's collapse had gone public 2 days earlier. Bankruptcy protection filed. Asset liquidation pending. Investors gone. The empire she ran toward had evaporated. I won't take much of your time, she said. You already did, I replied calmly. It wasn't cruel. Just true. She flinched, but she didn't argue. That was new. She stepped closer to my desk. I left him. I nodded once. I assumed. It's over. Completely. I leaned back in my chair. And? Her eyes filled instantly. Daniel, can we start over? There it was. Not, can you help? Not, can you advise? Start over. The room went quiet. I studied her face carefully. There was no arrogance left. No performance. No defensive energy. Just fear of losing something permanent. You left without a conversation, I said evenly. I know. You married him without telling me. I know. You told me I wasn't enough. Her voice cracked. I was wrong. I believed her. That was the strange part. I believed she understood now. But belief doesn't erase consequence. She took another step forward. I was insecure, she admitted. I thought I needed more status. More excitement. I thought being with him made me bigger. And now I feel smaller than I ever did with you. That sentence hung in the air. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't feel jealousy. I felt distance. And distance is colder than hate. Why are you here? I asked quietly. Because I realized something. She swallowed hard. You never broke. I said nothing. I expected you to chase me, she continued. To beg. To fight for me. To fall apart. And when I didn't? She looked down. I thought you didn't care. I stood up slowly. Not aggressively. Not emotionally. Just to meet her at eye level. I cared, I said calmly. But I respect myself more. Tears fell freely down her cheeks now. I thought you were too safe, she whispered. I was steady. I confused that with boring. And you confused noise with love. She nodded weakly. Yes. For the first time, there was no defensiveness in her voice. Just acceptance. I've never felt so stupid, she said. You're not stupid. I threw away something real. You made a choice, I replied. Her breathing became uneven. I thought you'd be angry, she admitted. I was. And now, I'm not. That unsettled her more than anger ever could. You don't hate me? She asked. No. You don't want revenge? I never wanted revenge. She stared at me, searching for something. For cracks. For pain. For bitterness. She didn't find it. Because it wasn't there anymore. I forgave you, I said quietly. Her shoulders shook harder. But I moved on. That sentence hit her differently. It wasn't rejection. It was finality. You moved on, she repeated. Yes. To someone else? That's not the point. Then what is? The point is I don't need you anymore. That was the truth she wasn't ready for. She didn't cry because she lost money. She cried because she lost control. Because she couldn't walk back into my life and reset the board. You're different, she whispered. No, I corrected softly. I'm focused. I thought you'd always be there. I replied. Until you decided I shouldn't be. She covered her mouth as the tears came harder. This time it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't manipulation. It was realization. You're stronger, she said quietly. I'm disciplined. She wiped her face but the tears kept coming. I don't recognize you. You never fully did. That hurt her more than anything else I'd said. I thought I understood you, she whispered. You understood the comfort, not the character. Silence filled the room again. I walked back behind my desk. Daniel, she said softly. Yes. If I had stayed, would we have been okay? I considered the question seriously. Yes. She nodded slowly, absorbing that answer. That's what scares me, she admitted. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. I thought I wanted more, she said. But I just wanted attention. And attention fades, I replied. But substance doesn't. She nodded again. For a moment I almost felt sorry for her. But pity isn't love. And forgiveness isn't reunion. Take care of yourself, I said calmly. That's it, she whispered. That's enough. She stood there for a few seconds hoping I would soften. I didn't. Not because I was cold, but because I was complete. Finally she turned and walked toward the door. Before leaving she paused. I'm proud of you, she said quietly. I didn't answer. After she left, I walked to the window and looked at the city again. The skyline hadn't changed. But I had. She thought I'd collapse when she left. Instead I refined. She thought I'd stay broken. Instead I became sharper. I didn't win because she failed. I won because I stayed steady. And for the first time since the empty closet, I felt nothing heavy in my chest. Just clarity. She didn't lose me because Ryan collapsed. She lost me the moment she believed I wasn't enough. And now, I didn't hate her. I simply didn't need her. That was the real upgrade. Months later, the headlines stopped being dramatic. They became factual. Cold developments files for bankruptcy protection. No bold fonts. No speculation. Just numbers catching up with reality. Ryan didn't disappear overnight. He faded. Asset by asset. Project by project. Statement by statement. Vanessa disappeared too. No more filtered sunsets. No rooftop champagne. No captions about forever. Her social media went silent first. Then her name stopped appearing in event guest lists. People don't cancel loudly. They just stop inviting. I didn't celebrate. Collapse isn't entertaining when you understand it. It's procedural. Predictable. Necessary. The same week Ryan filed bankruptcy, my company closed our largest acquisition to date. Clean capital. Stable growth. Measured expansion. No fireworks. Just structure. Marcus leaned against my office door one evening, scrolling through his phone. You see this? He asked, turning the screen toward me. A business article. Hayes Capital expands portfolio amid market instability. They called me strategic. They called my approach disciplined. They called my rise unexpected. There's nothing unexpected about patience. Marcus grinned. She wanted more? I adjusted my cufflinks calmly. She got less. He laughed. Cold. Accurate. That weekend I attended a private business gala. Not flashy. Not loud. The kind of room where real decisions get made quietly. Evelyn walked beside me. Not romantic. Not performative. Just aligned. She wore a simple black dress. Confident posture. Steady energy. People respected her. That mattered more than applause. You look relaxed, she said as we stepped into the ballroom. I am. Even after everything? Especially after everything. She studied me for a moment. You don't strike me as someone who enjoys watching others fall. I don't. Then what do you enjoy? Building correctly. She smiled slightly. That's rare. Stability is underrated. We moved through conversations effortlessly. Investors spoke to me differently now. Not because I was louder. Because I was consistent. Across the room I caught a whisper. Someone mentioning Ryan. Not mockery. Not sympathy. Just distance. That's how markets treat failure. They move on. Marcus joined us with a drink in his hand. Room's impressed, he said. They should be impressed with the numbers, I replied. Evelyn laughed softly. You really don't enjoy ego. Ego is expensive. She tilted her head slightly. And what's valuable? Position. That word hung between us. Position. I wasn't standing here because Vanessa left. I was standing here because I didn't collapse when she did. Because I didn't chase. Because I didn't react emotionally. Because I moved forward. Across the room, someone mentioned Vanessa's name quietly. Apparently, she had moved back in with her mother temporarily. No scandal. No drama. Just retreat. Marcus glanced at me. Still nothing? He asked. No. You don't feel anything? I feel finished. That surprised him. Finished? With that chapter. He nodded slowly. Growth looks good on you. I looked around the room. Clean deals. Measured expansion. Respect earned without shouting. This was the upgrade. Not louder cars. Not faster weddings. Not borrowed status. Just foundation. Evelyn stepped closer. You know, she said quietly, a lot of people in this room tried to grow as fast as Ryan. And? They're watching you now. That's fine. Why? Because I'm not racing them. She smiled. That's dangerous. No, I corrected. That's controlled. As the night wound down, Marcus leaned in again. You ever think she'll regret it forever? I considered that honestly. Regret isn't my concern. What is? Trajectory. He laughed again. You're impossible. No, I said calmly. I'm prepared. Later that night, as I stood alone near the balcony overlooking the city, I thought about the empty closet. About the letter. About the beach wedding photos. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt distance. She thought she left me behind. She never realized I was already ahead. Not because she failed. Not because Ryan collapsed. But because I never built my worth on applause. She chased noise. I built structure. She chose acceleration. I chose endurance. And endurance always wins. I adjusted my jacket and stepped back inside. The real upgrade was never about money. It was about mindset. And I had already evolved long before she walked away.